Welcome to our AuthorConnect Chat. I am your host, Danielle Brown. As head of strategic partnerships and editorial, I work with authors, publishers, agents, publicists, and other incredible industry partners here at BookPal, where we believe in the transformative power of books to ignite continuous learning and growth. Stick around for more announcements at the end of this chat, but for now, let's get to the good stuff. Our guest today is the author of the best-selling book, A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space. Stand tall, raise your voice, be heard. Her writing has been featured nationally and internationally, and she's been featured in TV and print news media and dozens of popular podcasts, including People Magazine, Cheddar News, Good Day LA, and plenty more. Before the pandemic, she spent much of her time looking out the windows of airplanes flying throughout the country and the world, conducting workshops on communications, career and workplace issues, and women's empowerment. Today, most of her work is remote, although she's excited she's finally beginning to share the same space with other humans again, doing the work that she loves. Eliza is the founder of the Actors Workshop of Ithaca with a background in the arts and political science. She's also a Cookhouse Fellow at Cornell University, an advisory board member of the Performing Arts for Social Change, and a member of Govern for America's League of Innovators. And she's given a very well-received TED Talk. She'll join the staff at Antioch University, where she'll be teaching a remote interactive course for their innovative new Women in Leadership program. She's also a parent of 4 fantastic humans, her nephew, 2 sons and daughter, and is a proud sci-fi nerd, as we have learned here at BookPal. Please welcome Eliza VanCort.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited because I am a sci-fi nerd, and you said my book was like Princess Leia, so I am forever in your debt. That was awesome.
I'm so glad we could set the bar high. And yes, thank you so much for being here. We are so lucky to have you on this series and to be talking about your book, A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space. And I love how you start out the book with really just talking about where the space claiming concept comes from. So can you just give a little teaser into that and how that is really the premise that flows through the entire book?
How it comes from in terms of my own personal life, how that came about?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that for me, it was a slow process. I started out with a lot of trauma in my life. My mother was paranoid schizophrenic, and I was actually kidnapped 3 times, and she took me across the country by truck from truck stop to truck stop. And what happened on that trip, whenever I say this, I think about my kids, and I think about what I would have thought if that had happened to them. And it makes me understand why, from a very young age, I started to conflate invisibility with safety. And so when you're starting your life out at a deficit like that, and then you're in a society that says, be small, be small, be small, you know, it's very hard to step into your power. But what ended up happening with me is I became a teacher. I was helping other people. I was really good at it, actually, but I wasn't so great with myself, which is often the case with women. And then someone hit me in the head with their car. I always joke I did something terrible in my past life. Like, why all of this stuff? But they hit me in the head with their car. I was riding my bike, and I was going through an intersection, minding all of the lights, and they were texting and driving, and they hit me with their car. And I ended up getting a bilateral brain injury and a subdural hematoma, despite the fact that I was wearing a helmet. And I lost a lot of my ability to communicate. And I slowly built it back, but it was very difficult. And in that process, I started watching people and observing people. And it was fascinating to me to see how you could say the same thing and be received completely differently depending on who you were. And after that, I started giving talks on communication throughout the world. And the final straw where I was like, I'm writing a book, is that women would follow me to the bathroom after the talk. They'd hear this click, click, click. And I was like, okay, here we go. And they would say, I got to ask you a question I didn't want to ask in Q&A. And then they would kind of sidle up to me, and we'd end up having another seminar in the bathroom or workshop. And what I realized is the questions I was being asked were the same. Whether they were in Hong Kong or Texas or New York, it did not matter. And all of those questions actually fell into these 5 buckets of claiming space. And that's when I thought, we really have to take these conversations out of the darkness and into the sunlight. I kind of learned this through the School of Hard Knocks, and there's no reason other people should have to go through this to have this information. And so I took all my training in political science and in the arts and all of my life experience and wrote the book. So that is the long version of how that came about. And to claim space is simply to live the life of your choosing unapologetically and bravely.
And I resonate with that so much so, because I feel like I had a very big blossoming, if you will, as I discovered Toastmasters, which is all about public speaking, but also just confidence. And I feel like a lot of the things you were talking about, especially physically and with your voice, those all really came to play as I was going through that. So I just love that you take it so much further and in so many different ways. And you really are giving women and just any reader of this book so many tools to succeed in claiming their space and living their lives unapologetically. So how was the road to getting the book published once you had all of these great ideas?
It was an interesting road because claiming space has 5 aspects, and one of them is the intersectional aspect, where I directly address race, because I really believe that historically feminism has been a white women's movement, and it has not served women of color, but it also hasn't served white women, because when we're united, we're so much stronger. So if we're kind of leaving a group behind, why would they join the movement? So the last 1/5 was really diving into issues of race and the intersection of race and womanhood. And I want to give credit to Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who is brilliant and came up with the idea of intersectional feminism. So I went to publishers and what I heard was, why are you talking about race in a book about women? Can you cut that part? Really, we're really into girl boss feminism right now. And I would say, because there are women who are not white, I don't know what to tell you. And they weren't having it. A lot of publishers were not having it. And it wasn't until I went to Barrett Kohler where I was kind of defensive at that point. And I was like, I just want you to know the last 1/5 is about intersectionality and I'm not cutting it. And Anya, my amazing editor, said, of course, you have to do it this way. And I thought, okay, this is the right person. It might be a smaller group, but a smaller house, but it's going to actually approach this in a holistic way. And I wanted to cover everything that women deal with, not just one thing or a couple things. And so I was thrilled about that. Thank you, Barrett Kohler, for that.
Yeah, that's how you know you found the perfect match, when they're saying exactly what you want to hear. That has to be there. That's perfect.
That's right.
Another one of the things that I really liked that you talked about in the book is that personal kryptonite or emotional kryptonite, and how we all have them. And there are just these unique weaknesses that we know will go from a space claiming superhero to a invisibility seeking nobody in less than 0.2 seconds.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about what those are and how people can try to uncover them more within themselves so they're aware?
Yeah, that's really the hardest thing, I think. When someone's coming at you and they're mansplaining you shamelessly, let's say you're a mechanical engineer and they aren't, and they're telling you all about mechanical engineering, it's very easy to point to that and say, you're mansplaining me. I know it because I'm a mechanical engineer and you don't know anything. So stop. Obviously you would say a little more tactfully than that. But if it's your stuff, the reason why we mess up in life is that we don't realize we have stuff, right? So we just go around thinking we're working on one level, but really we're working from this other level. And for me, so much of learning how to claim space is to identify your pain points. And so, for example, for me, I'm very much in my power in almost every aspect of my life. But up until very recently, thank you, therapy, and going through this book, which made me have to kind of dissect everything in a very methodical way, I really would sometimes not see if a man was just not good for me. I didn't see it. It just went, and that's because of a lot of stuff in my own training. And it's so systemic in me. And then there's also all these messages that women get, like, one day you're going to meet a horrible monster. He's going to be beastly and you're going to turn him into a prince and you'll love him forever. And it's just like, we're told this story. So when we see someone who's not right, we're just like, well, maybe if I sing to him like beauty, everything will be fine. And it isn't. And so much of the time for me, the way that I identify if I'm going into a place that is one of my pain points is that when you are under stress or duress, you will actually start to feel a little bit like you did at the time when that sort of pain point was born. So bear with me. So if you've ever been with someone and you say, God, that person makes me feel like a teenager again. I just feel so small. Probably means when you were a teenager, there was a point where you felt very insecure and small. And so then you start reacting from that teenage place. So anytime I start to feel like I'm younger or I'm acting immature, I try to kind of identify the date and think, okay, so what is happening here that is making me behave this way? And how am I going to make sure my adult self is responding to this and not my child self? And that's where that exercise about imposter syndrome comes in the book, to really help you identify that moment and kind of regroup with your adult self.
I really appreciate that advice, and it's so tactful and actionable, and which is one of the things I love about the whole book. And another thing that came up that I think can eat away a little bit at those weaknesses are the anti-mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really fascinating. It's not a concept that I had come across, but it's one of those things where as soon as you're looking at it, you go, oh, yes, we know those people.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what those are.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do with this book is not go for the thing that everyone had talked about, because we have books on that already. I wanted to think about what are we not unearthing? So one of the things we don't talk about in networking is integrity, which I think is very important. And also, who don't you want in your network? Because you can have the best network in the world, but if you have toxic people in it, it doesn't matter. They're going to just slowly go in there and just cause all kinds of little fires you're putting out, and you won't have the energy to even use your network. So anti-mentors are that person in your life who really should be your greatest supporter. They should be your cheerleader. They're usually a really close coach who's coached you for a long time, or an important teacher, or a parent, or an uncle, or a grandparent, or a boss. And their whole job is really to build you up. And instead they tear you down. And it's so hard because, we're told this story that those are the people that support us. And so there's this cognitive dissonance. Also, they do things that make us confused about whether they are mentors or not. So they'll be really nice to other people. And you'll think, why are they so nice to everyone else and not to me? Or they will say these little tiny comments. And there's a great saying, of course, your parents push your buttons, they installed them. They installed these buttons on you and they're constantly pushing them. And so I was very shocked when I went on TikTok. Actually, I just started TikTok. And the second time I started really posting in earnest, I talked about the qualities of an anti-mentor. I have almost 90,000 views on that one TikTok alone. And the comments, when you read it, will break your heart in half. The number of people who said, yes, I have that. And people who thought, I think it's so important, because once you know who your anti-mentor is, you can start to adjust your expectation. You can start to realize they're never going to give me what I want. And once you kind of grieve that, you can no longer be hurt by it. So for me, that was a huge process. I had a pretty hardcore anti-mentor in my life. And now I use all the tactics I talk about in the book to shut them down. I cannot divorce them, as they are not a partner, but they are in my family. And it's been transformative for me, really.
That's what I love about your book, is that it is so personal, and you inject so much of yourself into the book. And, we talked about before we hopped live that you have some amazing elements in the book that are interactive and fun, and you have these wonderful cartoons. Yeah. So tell us about how these cartoons came about. Whose idea was it? How did it happen?
Yeah, that's interesting. So actually, I paid for those out of my own pocket. Very cooler. No, I love them, but they do have a limited budget. So I really felt like they needed to be in there. And the reason why is I did my chapter on mansplaining. And one of my girlfriends who owns a gym said, this needs to be in every gym, in every restaurant, every public place, just put on the wall these tips. And I thought, what if I took that old genre of first aid for choking and I flipped it on its head and I did first aid for mansplaining? That would be absolutely amazing. So I called the woman who did my cover for my book and I said, can you draw? And she's like, sort of. And I was like, no, I know you can. Let's do this, because she can collaborate really well. Lynn Buckley, genius. Look her up if you ever need a cover for your book. The woman is amazing. I don't know if you can get her, but she's amazing. Just beg her. If it's a great book, she might do it. Don't do it. But anyway, what I did is I broke down the kinds of mansplaining. I also broke down interruptions, but I wanted all of those images show almost all the time blonde people that are white doing a very specific thing, usually on a man. And so I thought, well, who interrupts who? And what is the way in which they interrupt? So I contacted my friend who I quote in the book, Dr. Nia Nunn, and I said, who interrupts who? And what race interrupts who? Because I didn't just want to put in, men of different races in this way when maybe, and she said, no, Black men don't tend to interrupt statistically, particularly white women. And we went in this whole conversation. So we broke down by ethnic group, the statistics of interruption, which gender interrupts who, and we put that in there. And then I got all of my friends and family to pose for it, which was awesome. My daughter's in there, my nieces are in there. Those are all actors that I know. In fact, one of the couples, the older white couple with a man who's interrupting and the woman interrupted, they're married. So it's wonderful. And we just had an absolute blast for it. Although I did put my ex-boyfriend in there, and my daughter at the time said that was a dumb idea and said, Mom, it's like you're tattooing him on your body. And I said, no, it's not, Ella. She was right. But but he's a good guy, so it's not like it's the worst thing in the world. But that definitely is a constant reminder of that relationship forever, never. but they're fun. They're a lot of fun. Same with the crazy feminist bitch superheroes. Were also fun. Those are my nieces and me, and that was a blast as well.
Well, it's also that people can learn from the experiences and the hopefully non-experiences.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
All in the sake of growth, I think.
Absolutely. Yep. We all grow. We all make mistakes. That's part of life.
Mm-hmm. So stepping back a little bit, I would love to hear what is one of your favorite success stories, someone or yourself at a time who really just applied the principles of this book and soared. Actually,
it was right after I went on TikTok, believe it or not. This woman messaged me, and it was very early on. It was when I was talking about, how to shut down microaggressions. And she messaged me and she said she went to her bosses because she'd been dealing with a very serious illegal harassment situation at work. And she said that she had gone in there and used the techniques and they settled. Like they didn't even get a lawyer. They're like, we're going to give you lots of money. Please don't sue us. And they got her severance package and all this thing. I could not believe it, because usually I coach people. It takes some coaching, but she got it all from the TikToks, which was awesome. But I think the one that actually touched me the most, and this one I try not to talk about I try to talk about it and not cry, but it's hard. This woman, just an amazing woman, contacted me. She was actually working on my website. And she read the book, and this was before she started working on it. And she said, I just want to tell you, and her review is out there. And she said, I got out of an abusive relationship, and there are several people in this office, so I'm not outing anyone. She said, I got out of an abusive relationship years ago, and if I'd had this book, it would have changed my life. So I sent copies to the shelter that protected me and my daughter, for all the workers and for the women there. And then I got a copy for my daughter and wrote a letter to her about how to be strong, and I put it in an envelope, and I'm going to give it to her when she's old enough to read it. And I just, that was like, okay, I can be done now. I can die happy.
Mhm.
Like that was beautiful.
That is amazing. I'm so glad that you shared that, because that's exactly what you want out of this book. I feel that's, you want someone to really take it to heart and to avoid and get out of all those situations that either you were in yourself or you've seen people be in, or you just know are happening out there. And this book is just so powerful, and I love all of the advice that you share in it. So I'm so glad that it's making that kind of impact, because people need it. And women need to be living more unapologetically. I am all for it. So the more advice we can spread to make that happen, the better.
Agreed. 100%. 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been small for long enough. For 50% of the population, we deserve to take up 50% of the space.
Absolutely. Amen. Snaps for that.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot, and we talked earlier about the intersectionality conversation that you had as you were getting the book published. But I love also how you really do hammer home the idea that we all need to come together. And there's a lot of focus on being connected with other women, supporting other women. So do you have any specific, I guess, tips or suggestions to try to just like find and connect with your people so that you can all thrive together in claiming your space?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole section on that, and I can't go into all of it. I think I'm going to give you the one tip that I would do, and this is aimed toward women who are married in heterosexual relationships, because I think that this is one of the big issues that we have with women in that category. And then I'm going to actually give one other tip. But the first tip for that group is make sure that you are not doing your unfair share of domestic work, because men are out there networking all the time. And often it is because women are home caregiving after working. So they're doing their double shift, and it still exists. You'd think after Betty Friedan and all of these, all of these things long ago that we would have stopped, but intergenerational isms are very strong and hard to beat. So make sure you're taking time to spend time with other women. That is so critically important. And if you notice your husband always burns things and like leaves a mess, don't clean it. Don't do it. I really believe there's an element of like, well, if I screw this up badly enough, then I won't have to do it again. No, just let it be screwed up and make them fix it. And I'm not saying all men are like this, but there's a great song now called Incompetence that a man is singing about this, and it's great. You need to Google it. But he basically outs the entire male population. I love him so much. He's hilarious. So anyway, great ally. The other thing is that make sure you're not hanging out with women who look like you only, because the more that you do that as white women, we have more power right now in this society. And so if we're only hanging out with women that look like us, we are then disadvantaging an entire group of women. And that's not right. And we're never going to get anywhere if we're only working in one little cloistered group. First of all, it's unethical, but secondly, I mean, even from a purely Machiavellian self-interested standpoint, it's dumb, because we're never going to rise if only one group is rising. It's like that idea of humanity being like a bird. If one wing is too strong, it doesn't fly right. It doesn't help the wing that's too strong.
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of writing amazing books, what do you spend your time doing? What are you doing out there in the world?
Well, as you know, books don't make money, even if you sell a lot of them, because the author gets very little from them. So we do that because we love it. So what I am doing, despite the fact that my book did very well, is I love speaking and I love running workshops. So I go into organizations, nonprofits, corporations, academic institutions, and I give talks on communication. I give talks on women claiming space. I give workshops on communication, sometimes mixed genders, and sometimes just for women. And I also do diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which I now do with this other woman. She's incredible. And we, Kim Crowley, she's just amazing. And she's a Black woman, because I think it's very, very important. Both of us felt it was important to have two perspectives. So we go in and do kind of like this holistic workshop. And so it's just so much fun, and I love it. And I stay in touch with people. In fact, I'm going to New York next week, and I'm meeting up with a couple of people I met in one of the seminars. So it's so rewarding, and it makes a difference, which is important to me.
Yeah. Okay, before we close, do you have any last tip or anything that you'd like to add?
No, do we have questions or no from the audience? Do we have anything? I just want to make sure that no one didn't get to ask a question that was out there, if we
I
have
don't
any.
see anything in there, but if anyone watching right now does have questions for Eliza or about the book, A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space, by all means, post them in the chat or in the Q&A box on Zoom.
Yep. So well, the first thing is I love staying in touch with people. Whenever I do these things, I often get people who reach out to me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on TikTok, believe it or not. It's actually pretty cool. TikTok's pretty awesome. Facebook, don't do my business account. I'm terrible. Do my personal page. Instagram, all of the things. But the things that I'm most active on are TikTok and Facebook and LinkedIn. So feel free to do that. I'm terrible at Twitter, so maybe don't follow me on that. I'm just bad at a couple words. And then you can also follow me through my website, which is another way to stay connected. And if you have any questions and you get the book, I love answering questions about the book. I will do it all day long. So feel free to ask me any questions at all. And if your org is interested in calling me in to do work, of course, that's how I make my living. Feel free to reach out to me and I'll put you through to my agent. We'll have a conversation. So it would be really cool. So I think that's about it. And I guess the last thing I would say is believe you have the right to claim space, because that's the biggest hurdle. We're 50% of the population. As I said, we should be claiming 50% of the space. It is our right to claim space.
Absolutely. And if only we could simulate the women's bathroom visit after a virtual event, then I'm sure you would get tons of questions.
Yes, I'm sure I would as well. I'm sure I would as well. Yes, the bathrooms virtually are not nearly as fun as the in-person bathrooms, I will say. There's something magical about the women's bathroom.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Eliza, for sharing your amazing insights with the BookPal community. And thank you to those of you who were able to attend live or are watching this recorded. If you haven't read it already, I do highly recommend Eliza's book, A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space. It is intimate, interactive, and most importantly, powerful. It will make you feel like a superhero. And isn't that all what we need to feel right now?
And I want to say thanks to Melody, who has just said thank you. So thank you, Melody.
Yes, thank you, Melody. To purchase 25 copies or more of A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space for your team, organization, or community, you can visit our website at bookpal.com or email sales@bookpal.com. To our live attendees, we will be sending out an email with the recording of this chat next week. So keep your eye out for that email and make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter to be the first to know about future AuthorConnect updates. Thank you so much again, Eliza, for joining us, and we'll see everyone again soon. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep growing. Thanks for watching.